I wanted to create a program that analyzes the tweets of politically engaged Twitter users to figure out two things. First, what are the differences between the tweets of Republicans and the tweets of Democrats? And second, how do the tweets of politically engaged users differ from the tweets of non-politically engaged users? So I'll go through my process, and if you want to skip ahead to the end of the video just to get to the results, you can do that because I'm going to have timestamps in the description. I developed everything in Python. Now I design all of my notebooks so that the code is very easily reusable. So if you wanted to run this code, all you'd have to do is change the constants in this paragraph, the second paragraph. I actually made 6 notebooks for this program. The first 2 steps are here. We have to retrieve followers. I'm going to run this from scratch and see if this works, and to do that I have to set a directory. So I'm going to set a new directory here, and I'll just set it at the folder called temp. To do this program, I needed to sample 3 groups. One was a group of Twitter users from the general population, so that's effectively just random sampling. So that's my control group. The other 2 groups were followers of Rachel Maddow and followers of Sean Hannity. The followers of Rachel Maddow are supposed to be a proxy for politically engaged Democrats on Twitter. And then the followers of Sean Hannity are supposed to represent politically engaged Republicans. Obviously, that's built on several simplifying assumptions, first of which is that you can dichotomize political opinions into left and right, which isn't exactly true. You lose a lot of resolution when you assume that, but I'll get into that later. So I'm just changing this to followers of Maddow, and so that's what the output CSV is going to be named. And here I'm saying that I want 100 followers, and right over here we would just put our login information. So that's really all I should have to change in order to get the output that I want in this folder. So I'm going to input the login information for my API, and let's see what happens. So it just finished running, and there you can see the output CSV. So I'm going to open this just to see if everything printed out correctly. And it worked, except the column name was wrong, and that's because I forgot to update one of the constants at the top of the file. Now I need to run this file again, except this time I'm going to give followers of Sean Hannity, and there's our followers of Sean Hannity. Now to run this notebook, all I had to change were those 2 values, and there it is. I'm trying to run this quickly, but when I actually did it, I believe I retrieved over 3,000 users for Maddow and Sean Hannity, because it's really important to get a good sample size. If you're going to do NLP, you need a large sample size of text. Now there's a third thing that we needed, which is our control group. So we want to compare Republicans and Democrats to the general population, and that's what this notebook is for. Now this query, I left it as I just left it as A, and the purpose of the query was just to randomly sample Twitter users. Now you can argue if I put a query of A, that's not really truly random, and it's not, but I couldn't think of a better way of getting random Twitter users, so if you can think of a better way, then let me know. So I'm going to leave the query as A, and again, we're just trying to get a sample of the general population of Twitter users. I'm just going to change the directory here. We're going to call the output file random users. So we're going to run this file, and hopefully this is all we have to change and it's going to work. So now we're opening up our CSV to take a look at the results, and there they are, random people. Now we can close these notebooks. The next step was to retrieve tweets from those 3 different populations so we can compare them. And that's notebook 1. In this case, we need to set an input directory and an output directory. The input directory, we should have it set to random users. So these are tweets from the general population. And we're going to have an output file named tweets from random users. Now by default, this code is set to retrieve up to 25 tweets per person. It's important that we have an adequate sample of tweets per person because we're going to measure things like sentiment and subjectivity. And to analyze that, we need an adequate sample size per person. Later on, we're going to filter out any users for whom we were not able to get 25 tweets. After this is done running, you'll want to run this notebook 2 more times. You'll want to run it for tweets from Sean Hannity followers and also tweets from Rachel Maddow followers. So we're going to have those 3 different samples: Rachel Maddow followers, Sean Hannity followers, and the general population. After that, our next notebook we're going to run is right here to clean the tweets. So we have a bunch of tweets and we need to clean up the text. So let's open that. Now, as you can see, the notebook is finished. So now we have tweets from random users. So I'm just opening that up to see what it looks like. There are only 3 columns. There's the date, the tweet itself, and the name of the person who's tweeting. To clean the tweets, we're going to set our input directory to be the file that has all our tweets in it. And you'll have to do this 3 times for each of the 3 sets of tweets. Our output file is going to be tweets from random users cleaned. So I just added the word cleaned at the end so we can differentiate them. And there's the file. Now we're going to open up the sentiment and vocabulary notebook. The purpose of this code is to find the polarity and subjectivity of each Twitter user. Now here, we're filtering out any Twitter user that hasn't tweeted at least 25 times recently, because we need an adequate sample size per user. Then we take the average of their polarity and average of their subjectivity, and then we find the median polarity and subjectivity for all Democrats, all Republicans, and then all members of the general population so we can compare them. So input directory 1 is for Maddow followers, directory 2 is for Sean Hannity followers, and then we have our directory for the general population. So we're going to close this notebook, and we're going to open up the last notebook. And for this last notebook, we're going to compare word frequency between Republicans and Democrats to find out which words Republicans use more and which words Democrats use more. And to compare the two, we're just using a simple ratio of the word frequency. So what you see right here are words that the Democrats like to use and not Republicans. Words down here are favored by Republicans and not Democrats. I took a subset of these results and I analyzed them in my final presentation. So let's open up that final presentation. The Democrats and the Republicans' median tweet positivity is way off to the left of the 50th percentile. What that means is that the Republicans and Democrats' tweets are way more negative than the general population. And specifically, the Democrats' median sentiment is at the 15th percentile of this distribution. What that means is that a typical follower of Rachel Maddow is more negative than 85% of the general population. A typical follower of Sean Hannity is more negative than 83% of the general population. And the followers of Rachel Maddow are slightly more negative than the Sean Hannity followers. Now let's take a look at tweet subjectivity. Republicans and Democrats' tweets are left of center, and that means that their language tends to be more fact-based than opinion-based. Now you might say, well, political tweets have plenty of feelings and opinions in them. That may be true, but they're not as subjective as the casual language of non-politically engaged users. So political language is by its nature a little bit more objective than subjective if you were to compare it to all other language on Twitter. But it's not a huge gap, because the Democrats' subjectivity falls into the 44th percentile, so it's not a huge difference. There is actually a significant gap in subjectivity between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans tend to have significantly more objective language than Democrats. So let's see which words the Democrats use more often than Republicans. I divided these words into categories, and especially if you follow news, you probably know how they're all related. They're all related to Trump. So Trump is a nickname that they have for him that's disparaging. They're upset that he's golfing, and they're upset that he said something about bleach. I'm not going to get into it, but the theory goes that he said something irresponsible about bleach, that he has ignored warnings from experts. They mentioned his presidency and said that he's threatened someone and that he should resign. So those are all about Trump. And here are more dislikes, and this is a different category. We see a lot of names here: Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Dominic Cummings, Colt, and GOP. The last part gave it away. All of these words, they're said about Republicans. And here we have a third category. These are things that they're concerned about besides just Trump and Republicans. So notice that the language that they use. So they use the word violated. The key demographic here, which are Rachel Maddow followers, leans heavily female. So it's interesting that they use this word, but Republicans don't. They also use the word devastating much more than Republicans, and selfish. So this tells you what their values are. They're concerned about Russia, which is why you see the word Putin, and also bots, because they're concerned about Russian bots, or generally bots, which are machines that are intended to manipulate the internet. They're concerned about viruses because of COVID-19. What's interesting is that the Democrats are much more concerned about COVID-19 than the Republicans. Now again, here you see an inkling into their values because they're concerned about people who are struggling, so they're empathetic. They're concerned about terrorism. Now, as we'll see when we get to the Republicans, they're also concerned about terrorism, but they don't use the word. Republicans personalize it, and Democrats do not personalize it. So Democrats are concerned with terrorism as a noun, but Republicans are concerned with terrorists. But we'll get to that later. And here we see their values. So these are words. These are words that they use much more frequently. So they value equality, safety. They value the universality or of benefits and opportunities. That's why they also use the word eligible. They want everyone to be eligible, equitability. And then finally we get to their interests. Now I put Elizabeth Warren and Tara Reid in here, but a lot of these interests are actually not personal. Notice that the Democrats are much more likely to use the words writing, inspiration, and artist, so they're more artistic. They also use the word Zoom a lot more, which just shows that they might be more technologically advanced, and they're concerned with learning, which is why you see the words lessons and strategy. Now, some of the results that are omitted here, but that I got on previous runs, is that they tend to use the words data and scientist and science more often as well, although the difference isn't too stark. Now let's move on to Republicans, and here we have their dislikes, and all of these dislikes are related. So Ilhan Omar, who's a Democrat, Sleepy, that's a nickname for Sleepy Joe Biden, who's a Democrat, Ewing Black, which is something that a Democrat said, Gretchen Whitmer, who is a Democrat, prosecuted. In this case, they're upset that James Flynn's prosecution by Democrats, by the Obama administration. Joe Biden, again a Democrat, Barack Obama, who's a Democrat, Dems, liberals, Adam Schiff, and James Comey. I actually don't know if James Comey is a Democrat. I believe he's supposed to be apolitical, but I put him in this category as well. That might have been a categorization error. So all of these words, or almost all of them, are just Democrats. Here we see more of their dislikes. CCP, that is the China's Communist Party, so they don't like China, which is why you see Wuhan appear here as well, and also communist. They don't like media, that's why they use the words fake news and mainstream media and mainstream. They don't like abortion, which is why you see funded and Planned Parenthood here, and coup, which shows that they're afraid that there's going to be a government coup against President Trump. And here again, you see they don't use the word terrorism, they use the word terrorists. So for them, it's more personalized, even though they're both referring to the same problem. Here we see their values. They value patriotism, they value hard work, which is why they use the word earned more. Amen, so they value the Bible, biblical values, and they value greatness or excellence. And lastly, we have their interests. They're more interested in football, and I only know that because they were using the word Heisman a lot more frequently, and that refers to the Heisman Trophy. In general, something that I learned from analyzing this political language is that they're much more preoccupied with what they dislike than what they like. That's why Democrats talk a lot more about Republicans, and Republicans talk a lot more about Democrats. opinions. So they spend most of their language complaining about things that they dislike, which is also why their tweet positivity is far lower than the general population's, falling at roughly the 16th percentile compared to the general population. So people who are politically engaged use much more negative language. And we also learned that Republicans use more objective language than Democrats, who use more opinion-based language. I want to make a few caveats here. Firstly, I sampled over 3,500 users from each of these populations, which is a very good sample size, and I only sampled users for whom I could get at least 25 tweets. So 25 tweets is a pretty good sample size to assess sentiment. But the only problem is the simplifying assumption that, first, that you can dichotomize political opinion between left and right. That's not really true. You lose a lot of resolution when you assume that. And the second assumption was, even if you grant that we can somehow dichotomize political opinions into left and right, the problem is Rachel Maddow's followers aren't representative of everyone on the left. Same thing with Republicans. You can't use just followers of Sean Hannity to generalize all Republicans. So there are certain subsets that we're losing by using these proxy groups. So they're not necessarily representative exactly of the population that we intended to measure, but it's an approximation. If you want to access any of these files, including the code or the output slides, everything's going to be linked in the description below. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment below. And thanks for watching.